The intro always gets me hype. Hey guys, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. My name is Jessica and I'm your host. And you can follow me on Twitter at It's Jessino. And this is the She Knows Arsenal podcast, episode 8. Jack is back. Yes, this will be up on audio. It will be. I will get it up on audio. You guys, literally, I'm the worst. Like, I know I am. But yeah, these will be up on audio because they're a podcast. So you need to be able to listen to them like when you're not watching it. You know what I mean? So yeah, but I know it's been a long time coming. Some of these topics are a little bit old. They're stale. You're probably like, Jess, been there, done that. I've heard everybody's opinion on these. But to be honest, you haven't heard mine. So I'm going to give mine anyway. And today I want to talk about Jack Wilshere and him being back at Arsenal. Not back playing, but back training, at the very least with Arsenal. And what are my thoughts on it? We're also going to talk about Arteta being the September manager of the month. And I'm not surprised that he got it. He won 3 from 3. And so I feel like it's deserved. But at the same time, we're going to analyze it a little bit and figure out or kind of discuss whether or not we should use that as a measuring stick of him getting better or what. There's a lot to unpack there and to nitpick. And also Saliba's progress. We had some interesting information come out from Fabrizio Romano kind of saying that Saliba has known for weeks that he's going to come back to Arsenal and he's a part of the plans. And it'll be interesting to see how that works out if it comes to fruition. Personally, that is what I would like to see happen. I think Saliba is too talented to let go now. And I just feel like a defender of his quality should be at our club. And we're going to talk about his progression. I mean, I think he's always been talented, but I do think this loan stint at Marseille has helped him out. I still think he has some ways to go. He's only 20 years old, but I do think that he's getting better. And, so we can chat about that as well. There's about 20 of you guys watching on all platforms. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and all of that. And let's start off with the Jack Wilshere conversation. So if you haven't been here before, Jack Wilshere is one of my favorite Arsenal players of the Emirates era. And out of the players that I've known, I've been watching Arsenal since 2002. He still ranks in my top 5. There's just some players that, you could name other players that were probably better than him, had longer or more influential careers at Arsenal. But the reality is you just have an affinity for certain players. You just like them over others because you just love them. And Jack Wilshere for me was one of those. I always felt like he was super, super special. And what I loved about him the most was his attitude and the fact that he thought he could go toe to toe with anybody. That I rate very highly in a young player. And I feel like he felt like he could go up against anybody. And we saw him do that against one of the best Barcelona sides in the world. And that's one of his famous performances, if that's what you want to call it. But when you look back at compilations of Jack Wilshere, it makes you happy, and you kind of look at some of the things that he's done and you're like, shit, he was really, really good. But then on the other end, you're kind of like, man, those injuries, and I think his name is, the first thing that you'll say is he was good, and the second thing you'll say is that he had a lot of injury issues. And those injuries really plagued him throughout his career. And I think some of it was overplayed. I think some of it was, I had a friend that was kind of telling me about the way that he ran, just even the way that he moved, put unnecessary strain on parts of his legs that inevitably added to his injuries. So he had a lot going on, but I think when that group of players were unveiled and they were signing their contracts and they were the new British core and part of new Project Youth and all of that. And it was your Jack Wilsheres, your Ramsey, Carl Jenkinson. Who else was there? Gibbs. Yeah, Kieran Gibbs. Who else was there, guys? It was like there's one more in there as well. But I was excited. I was excited about that group. I really was. And now you look back on it and you're like, damn, like, were they ever here? Oxlade-Chamberlain, he was the other one. Um, but I think that group of players is really special, and I think Jack Wilshere and probably Ramsey were the most special out of that group. But I something just it never really sat right with me because I think Jack Wilshere had super talent and could have went on to be like a real world class talent. Cesc Fabregas said that out of all of the players that he played with at Arsenal, and you have to think about the players that he played with: Van Persie, Thierry Henry. He played with so many really good players. He said that Jack Wilshere is probably the only player that he could see playing with that peak Barcelona side in midfield. He could hold his own. That is a compliment. Like, that is a serious, serious compliment because that Barcelona side, if you didn't have tech, if you weren't extraordinary and technically secure on the ball, you would never play. And Cesc would know because he rarely played. No, I'm joking. But yeah, the guy was special, and seeing his career kind of deteriorate the way that it did was very, very sad for me, and I know it was for a lot of other people. And he just kind of left out of the back door to go to West Ham. Never really played at West Ham either, and then ended up at Bournemouth. And you know, I tuned into some of those games and I just thought this is not right. Like, cuz he's like 30, 31 years old. He could still legitimately be playing, and he can't even get a game at Bournemouth. Like, this is crazy. But I love the guy, and you know, he was trying to find places to train. And when he mentioned maybe coming back to Arsenal to train, and then Arteta caught wind of it, I knew he'd be at Colney. And that's just the Arsenal way, isn't it? We take care of our own. And um, now he's back training with like under 23s, I think, for the most part. And it's awesome. It's nice to see. And there were a lot of Arsenal fans, not a lot, I won't say a lot, but I did see quite a bit of it on Twitter of give him a play for pay, pay for play, pay for play. That sounds horrendous. But you know what I mean? Like, you when you play, you get paid for that. And I was just like, have you not seen the guy play over the last couple of years? The drop off, he couldn't play for Arsenal Football Club, and that hurts me to say that. But I don't even think he's up to the standard to give him a contract like that. He's just not the same guy, and I think I hate to say it, but I think his career as we know it is pretty much done. And he'll probably give one more try to see if he could go somewhere else, but I think he'll end up coaching. But the most important thing to me in all of this is I saw a photoshopped picture of Jack Wilshere um, at training. It was photoshopped, you guys, so it wasn't real. But Jack Wilshere talking to Charlie Patino. And I just thought to myself, I was like, that's the best case scenario that we could get out of this, is that Jack could be kind of like a pseudo mentor to some of these young players in the academy. I remember Bukayo Saka talking about, one of the pictures that they used to always walk by, like in, the academy, is they have pictures of Jack Wilshere everywhere because he's kind of like the poster boy of Hale End. And I was like, that's perfect. That would be perfect. He may not be able to really add a lot in terms of the first team, because his first team career at Arsenal was good, but it really tapered off. But where he would be very, very valuable to the club is within the academy and the under 23s because they worship him and look up to him. And maybe the new poster boy will be Bukayo Saka. I think he will be. I think it's pretty obvious. But the old school one, or the one before that, was Jack Wilshere. And I thought maybe it would be a good situation for all parties if he could just be around enough to mentor the players in the academy and give them some solid advice, on how to make it from the academy to the first team and all of that. I think that would be the best possible scenario for everybody. But I just like seeing him active. And over the last couple of years, it just felt like the saddest story ever. And I would love to see him just get to a point of just happiness within his career. It feels like there's a lot of sadness there, so and maybe I'm projecting and he's perfectly fine, but I know in the Ornstein interview he regrets leaving Arsenal and having to explain to his kids why he's not playing and all of that. And that has to be really, really hard for somebody who was right in the thick of things. I mean, he's not a player that really struggled, to get playing time really until the injuries came about. In terms of ability, the guy had bags of ability, but the amount of injuries just really took a toll, So for me, I'm so happy to see Jack at Colony. I hope that he has kind of like a pseudo mentor um kind of role, for the little bit of time that he's here. And it could give him a little bit of a leg up in terms of getting some training in so that he could maybe try to find somewhere to play before the end of his career. See what you guys are saying. I know I was just talking. Belvishwan, hey, I haven't seen you in a while. Let's see. Tony Smith says Jack can teach the kids a thing or two while he does his badges. I mean, that's the best case scenario, isn't it? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I think it's so far fetched to think that he could play in the midfield for Arsenal Football Club when if you had watched him at Bournemouth, you could just really tell like the levels are just not there. And I don't think it's necessarily a matter of he just needs to train a little bit more. I think he's kind of fallen off of a cliff, if that's a way to say it. Akash says Saliba, White, and Gabriel are brilliant center back pairings for the future. Yes, we'll talk about that in just a sec. Lord Gunnar says, honestly thought the British core was nothing more than an attempt to fill a quota, in my opinion, since at the time Arsenal was getting a lot of heat for not fielding enough homegrown players. And whether it is or not, I don't have intel into whether or not it was, a means to an end in terms of making the quota or if they really wanted this. Let's not get it twisted. Arsenal are good at spin. So, the homegrown quota meeting that may have been in a veneer of like, this is our new British core and this is what we really want. But for me, I think it's important to have a British core. I think the best Arsenal teams of old have always had one. And when I started watching the Invincibles, I know that a lot of the talk around them was that they didn't have enough English players, and I get that. But some of the best Arsenal teams, like even like a couple years prior to that, Ray Parlour and Tony Adams and Martin Keown and Ashley Cole and these guys were important parts of the team as well. And I think you have to have both in the Premier League in particular. I think the strongest teams usually have some sort of British core, and I don't think it's just because of the quota, but maybe for Arsenal it is. I'm not sure. I wasn't there in the conversations, Let's see. Lord Gunnar says Jack Wilshere reminds me of Rosicky and Carthola. Incredible, talented player hampered by injuries in such a competitive league. We've had our fair share of these, There is a poll. I did the poll not too long ago, but it keeps circulating around Arsenal Twitter. If you could give one Arsenal player an injury-free career, who would it be? And my initial answer is always Jack Wilshere because I just love him so much, and I thought his talent was just he could have really been something, But if you really think about it, you could also say like Eduardo. I think if he doesn't get injured, we win the league. You think about Van Persie, he had quite a bit of injuries. I know he's a snake, but he did have some injuries that hurt us. Ramsey is another one that was really hampered by injury. Diaby is somebody who was really hampered by injury. And Arsene even said that he thought Diaby would be better than Vieira, and we never got to see it. So I think as a football club, we know what it feels like to have players hampered by injury. And sometimes it just happens to be the really talented ones. And that's why I think it's important for us to be really cognizant of Emile Smith-Rowe and Saka's age. And if we want them to be good for us in the long run, we have to play them less now. And I would prefer for us to have a foundation of players that were reliable and within that prime age, but we just don't have that. And I fear for them long term, because they're putting a lot of, especially Bukayo, putting a lot of minutes in their legs. And even like Bellerin, you see one big injury can change everything. I know a lot of people don't like Bellerin, but if you go back and watch some of them old games of him, gosh, that guy was rapid. I mean, that guy was his speed, although he may have been a pace merchant, if that's what you want to call him, but that speed was frightening, and he was a weapon in the final third. You look at just a couple of injuries or even one big one could end your career, not in terms of never playing again, but not playing at the highest level. So, I think Bukayo Saka and Emil Smith Rowe in particular are ones that we really want to be careful with, because we don't want them to get to be like Jack. We don't. And Arteta was there for Jack towards the end of his Arsenal career. So I would hope that he would know that. Oxlade-Chamberlain is also somebody who had a lot of injuries too, which is really interesting. Blake Terrence says Jack Wilshere might get a little experience for managing, because he could teach the youth players while training at Arsenal, etc. Yeah, exactly. And that's the best case scenario for everybody, is that it's a give and take type of relationship. It's you get good experience for your badges while you give some sound advice for the Patinos and the Surgeons and all the young players that are kind of like in and around there. I would love for him to talk to Patino, because from what I've seen, he has he has the Wilsheres about him. He doesn't have the grit per se, and I think that's one of Jack's downfalls, is that he felt like he had to be that gritty kind of fighter, and he really was just like a technical, really beautiful player to watch. Patino has a lot of the Wilsheres about him, and I think that would be a nice little pairing, just like David Seaman with Ramsdale. I think there's a lot of parallel in there. So that's pretty much my outlook on it. I love the kid. I do, and he's still like a huge Arsenal fan. He really cares about the club and all of that, and I think that's the best case scenario, for everybody. So yeah, now let's talk about Arteta for Manager of the Month. He won Manager of the Month for September, and again, I wasn't surprised that he got it. I really wasn't, because he won all 3 games, and it was seen as a turnaround and all of that. So you guys let me know in the chat box, what did you think about him winning Manager of the Month? Do you think it was deserved? Do you think it warranted the amount of debate around it? A lot of people are taking into account the level of opposition that we played. And I think that's interesting, because I've never really seen that before, where people are literally dissecting the level of opposition to scrutinize whether or not a manager should get Manager of the Month. Now, before we talk about this in depth, I just feel like it's important to say that I think these little Manager of the Month, Player of the Month type of awards are actually not that important. Besides Golden Boot and Player of the Season, I don't think these mean much. A Manager of the Season or whatever they get, I don't think these really matter that much, but it had so much debate going around, and I couldn't understand why, because on one hand, it's just not that important, but at the same time, I just feel like if you win 3 on the bounce after the team had lost 3 on the bounce, you would be the first option unless somebody else did something greater, and I don't think anybody did. Is somebody spamming the chat? Okay, Hakuna Matata, chill out. We hear you. We hear you. So yeah, I think with Arteta, I think from an Arsenal perspective, if you're thinking about it, you're like, cool, he won, and that's cool. But I don't think we should overplay it or overthink about it, because I think the next 3 games that we have are going to be a bigger measuring stick of where we're going. I don't think playing against Chelsea and Man City, I think we need to back up a little bit. I think we felt like we were in a position where we had the lesser teams sorted. So now we need to focus on actually competing with Man City and Chelsea when we play against them. I think we've taken some steps back, and we need to get back to the point where we can actually beat the smaller teams. You know what I mean? We're actually not at that point anymore. And so when we talk about like the Crystal Palaces, the Watfords, and Aston Villa, who is a team that's very competitive and on par with us, I think we need to win at least 2 of these games to feel like we're actually turning a corner. If we win one, lose one, draw one, I do think that it kind of it will make people feel as though we haven't. I think it'll be a bigger indication of where we are. Like I don't want to speak for other people, but I do feel that the last 3 games was not a turnaround. It was more of a get back on track, but we haven't really turned around. It's kind of like you drove off the road. You know what I mean? You had an accident. And so we were in the AAA calling for somebody to help us fix our car, and we fixed it enough for it to go. Now we actually have to get back on the road and get back into where we're going. I don't think it's that big of a turnaround. And I mentioned this in the earlier show that I kind of felt like from the numbers pod that Scott did for Arsenal Vision, it gave me a very clear picture that in connection with what I've been seeing of the fact that we haven't improved as much as people think we have in terms of what really matters, and that's scoring goals and giving up big chances. We have given up big chances against we gave up big chances against Norwich, and we gave up big chances against Spurs. We didn't give big chances away at Brighton or Burnley, but I think we also have to be honest and say that maybe we haven't in those games our quality did not show. It wasn't a 1-0 win or a 0-0 draw, but we looked so much better, and they were trying to keep us out. We were trying to keep them out. And I think that's something that we have to take note of. I'm still a little bit apprehensive about the way that we try to create chances, and I think it's perfectly fine to have questions about that. Against Brighton, I don't think they have that amazing of a defense. They really don't. I mean, we can say that they're so organized from Graham Potter, but they're not really like an amazing defensive outfit. They're just a well-organized team where if we have the quality that I feel like we do, even if they're well organized, we should be able to lay a glove on them. Burnley is a team that I think is going to go down. They don't look very good. Their metrics say that they're probably one of the worst teams in the league, and we didn't really create much against them. And Norwich, we had superiority over them in terms of XG, but we did give away a big chance against them. And we didn't necessarily put them under the amount of pressure that we probably should. And then Spurs was kind of like, I almost feel like I want to throw that game out a little bit because it was the North London derby. I do think that Kane missed a chance or two that he on a different day probably wouldn't have missed. And yeah, I think we sat back so much in the second half that had we had given up that second goal, we would have been in trouble. So, and that's not to say that the performance wasn't great, the feeling wasn't great, that we didn't deserve to win. But I think that Spurs match, we're not as good as that Spurs game. That's not who we are at the moment. I think we're closer to the team that played Norwich, Burnley, and Brighton. I think that's who we are, a team that is defensively more solid, but still gives up big chances, has a hard time creating shots and good shots from our possession, can only go back to front like to score goals. We don't really have sustained amounts of pressure where the other team is in their half kind of just batting away shots and chances, and we don't take good shots. We don't score goals. We don't score enough. So I think for me, it's although Arteta did win Manager of the Month, do I think he's the best manager in the league? No. And I think there's still huge questions about his ability to get us scoring. I think that's a big question that a lot of Arsenal fans have. And I think it's valid. A lot of this time I felt like it was personnel. I do think some of it is personnel. Like we definitely need a new striker, and I think we need another attacker in general. 2 attackers, a striker, and something else. And we still need a midfielder. But that being said, if you look at the other teams in the league and you see Antonio, Jared Bowen and Ben Rama. You look at Ollie Watkins. Who else do they play with on those wide areas? Traore and Danny Ings. You look at, Townsend is a madness right now, but let's be real, he's not amazing. Townsend and Rondon and whoever else they play on the other side. I'm looking at other teams and I'm thinking, are we really that bad at creating chances and scoring goals? Like, it's Emile Smith-Rowe, Bukayo Saka, Aubameyang, Lacazette, Pepe, Odegaard. Are those players that much worse than the players that I just named? I don't think so. So why are we having such a difficult time creating chances? You could say it's the midfield or it's whatever. But at the same time, I think we have to be honest about the fact that we're quite predictable. Our patterns of play are really predictable. We have to have a perfect from back to front type of move to score a goal. And once they found out Tierney, a lot of our chance creation just became a nothing. And a lot of what we try to do is through Emile Smith-Rowe and Bukayo Saka dropping in between the lines. But once you figure out that you can just kick those boys, what is the next layer of our attacking play? And how is Arteta going to get that out of this team when you play against a Crystal Palace that looks rejuvenated under Patrick Vieira, or an Aston Villa side that will press you just like Brighton pressed you? I'm not sure that I'm 100% certain that it's going to look like a turnaround after these next 3 games, So yeah, he deserved the manager of the month, but there's still some questions there, and lots of questions there. And I'm still looking at this group of players, and I know it's not the Aubameyang of old. I know Lacazette's not the most amazing, but I think Lacazette is better than Mikel Antonio. Do you know what I'm saying? As a footballer, he's a better footballer than Mikel Antonio, don't you think? Saka and ESR are great players, and I think Pepe is a good player. We're not getting the most out of that group. And I feel like it has something to do with the system, but it's hard to put your finger on it because when you're watching us, it's just like, okay, well, if that move hadn't broken down, then we might have. But I think the fact that we're always just kind of figuring out a reason why we're not scoring these goals, and it's always an excuse here, an excuse there. The grass was too long, or it was dry, the conditions, it was just a bad day at the office. Really comes down to is that our attack is weak. Scott said earlier that we're about the 8th to 10th best team, statistically, and in some metrics we're down towards the bottom. And that's alarming to me when you look at the caliber of players that we have. We do have good players, but they're just it's not clicking. And that's not to say that Arteta is not a bad player or a bad manager. I just think he hasn't gotten the attack part of it. And I also think that us being very defensively, very risk adverse in some instances, is still not helping us not have big chances against. I think Ramsdale saved our bacon a couple of times, and we'll see, because in some of these matches he won't save our bacon, and we'll see what's really real. But yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting one. I do think that we will know after these next couple of games what's really going on, because we need to be able to score more goals. And right now people are saying, well, the Brighton match was a difficult one. If during the Burnley match the grass was more wet, we would have. But at some point, the excuses they're not gonna run anymore. And I think these next 3 games would be a good place to start with no excuses. Lord Gunnar says, I wonder how Wenger will do with these crop of players. I feel for the development of Saka and ESR under this restrictive system. And you know what I thought about? If you watch Saka's goal against Andorra, and I know it's Andorra and they're shit, they're not a good, no, okay, I'm not saying Andorra is a shit place. I'm saying that their team is not great. Sorry, you guys. I should have said that, because now I'm like, oh no, somebody's going to think I mean that. But they're not great. But the pass that Foden made for Bukayo Saka's goal, although it's an amazing pass, what I thought was that pass put him right on the corner of the 6-yard box. So all he had to do, he was one-on-one with the goalkeeper. And I think, how many times do we pass the ball and we get into the 6, or a player is one-on-one on goal? Most of the time, they have so much work to do, or the next pass is difficult to find, or we pass it in unnecessary triangles for no reason and just lose it. And I think about Bukayo and I'm like, I think we're doing him a disservice. When you play at right wing, although he holds it down brilliantly, he has too much work to do. He has too much work to do. And we should work harder to get our attackers in situations that disadvantage the opposition. And a lot of times that's one-on-one closer to the box. Pepe one-on-one close to the box is infinitely better than Pepe 1v3 out by the touchline. And that's a system issue. It's a system issue. I really do believe that. So yeah, I think I would love to see, and I know it can't happen, but I would love to see another manager coach this team for like 3 or 4 games and see what happens, because we'll never know unless Arteta gets sacked. But I'm thinking the excuses are going to run out soon in terms of why the attack is not really clicking. We can always say that the patterns of play and the way that we build up is a lot better, and our playing out of the back is a lot better, and we're getting into decent areas. But the reality is it's not turning into goals, and it's not turning into good shots, high XG chances, and we're not creating at volume. And we're easy to defend against, and very, very easy in terms of our predictability. Our predictability is insane. You always know that our options are get it out to Tierney and let him run down the side and progress it on his own and try to get a cross in, or Saka and ESR drop in between the lines and progress it forward and try to make something happen. And I feel like we should have a little bit more diversity in the way that we try to attack, or attack in a way that's so dangerous that even if you do it only a couple times a game, you create chances. But I think he hasn't figured that out yet, and I'm not sure that he will. Don One says Arteta micromanagement doesn't allow them to play too rigid in formation. Yeah, I think it comes off stiff, and we don't overlap. We don't take risks. We kind of play with 2 DMs and a right back that doesn't get into the attack. So that's 2 less attackers, if you really think about it, than some of the other teams have, if you think about it that way. And yeah, it's not amazing, is it? And it does seem a little bit stressful and rigid in the way that we play. Tam says, I want Arsenal to go back to freestyle football. I've had enough of Arteta's insufficient system. Good defensively, but horrible offensively. Yeah, I think we are more defensively sound in a way, but I believe that rigid approach to the way that we defend does take away from our attack. And when I think about Kieran Tierney, wouldn't you prefer a midfielder to be in the positions that Tierney takes up and let Tierney stay back a little bit, and only take opportunities to overload in wide spaces when it feels right, versus do you see what I'm saying? Tierney is the one that's our main creator, but do we want our left back to be our main creator? I mean, I know that Trent Alexander-Arnold does it for Liverpool, but I would say that their quality on the ball is quite different. And Trent doesn't always have to bomb forward up both up the touch line. I think Tierney has to do too much. And if you think about, if you were able to take away the midfielder, one of the midfielders, and give yourself an attacking 8 in that position that was combining with the left wing instead of Tierney, I think you might get better results. I think it's also the players that we have in attack. I would prefer, instead of my left back being an attack, a midfielder being an attack that's good offensively. Does that make sense? So I think that's a part of it. And him being our main creator. Our main creators are Tierney, ESR, and Saka. That's it. Those are our main guys. Our right back does not bomb up. We have 2 defensive center midfielders that pretty much stay in the center circle. None of them make third man runs into the box, and they're pretty much tied at the hip. It's restricted in terms of what we can do, and we don't ask enough questions of the opposition, and they don't have to solve anything on the fly because they always know what's going to happen. They always know that if it doesn't go out to Tierney, we'll look for Saka and ESR. I almost said Theophilus. Sorry. Theophilus says, if we need a serious striker, who would you recommend if Laka leaves? It's a tough one, because I don't know how we play. I still don't understand what kind of striker we would need. A lot of people love a false 9 because some of the most interesting players over the last 5 years have been false 9s. And I think Liverpool has kind of spoiled it a little bit, thinking that that's the best type of system to have somebody drop in and play almost like a 10. But I would prefer just like an all-out penalty box, like kind of assassin type player that likes to get on the end of crosses, not like a poacher, but somebody that can shoot with their feet, likes to head the ball, will get stuck in the box. So when it's a little jumbled in there, they're up for the fight. They'll make defenders nervous because they know that they're willing to fight for the ball. Somebody that has a little bit of buildup in them. I think it doesn't take much to be better than Aubameyang in buildup. And I know that might sound harsh, but I just think Aubameyang just lacks it. And I think somebody that could just, in general, just hold up the ball, the center backs have to take notice of that player. Either they have to double up on him, or if you have to play against him one-on-one, you're in trouble. I think that type of striker, somebody that's over the height of 6'2", something like that, around 6'2", strong, can hold the ball up, has a little bit of build-up play, but doesn't have to be Firmino false 9 vibes. It just has to be somebody who can hold it up, turn, pick a pass, is good with their head, can shoot, is not like the type that it just doesn't have a great shot on them, somebody that's really accurate, and somebody that works really hard and can press. I don't know who that person is. You know what I mean? I'm probably describing Holland, but I would say somebody like a Dominic Calvert-Lewin fits that bill for me. I don't know if he's an elite striker yet because he's had one really good season under Ancelotti and he's been injured this entire season. So I don't really know what his level is. But what I will say is he's an extreme athlete. And for me in the Premier League, being an athlete is you have to have athletes in your team. And I think we've become more athletic. But what I will say is that some of the athletes that we have in our team are not our best players at the moment. So you talk about your Lukankas and your Tavares. They're great athletes, but they're not number one choices, Ainsley Maitland-Niles. And I think having athletes in your first team that also have the quality in other areas is important. And so Dominic Calvert-Lewin is somebody that I would look at. But again, what does Dominic Calvert-Lewin look like in Arteta's system? Does he get service? I think he's definitely somebody that could get on the end of Tierney's crosses. I think when Tierney was really getting crosses in and Aubameyang and Lacazette were ducking out of the way, I think Dominic Calvert-Lewin scores some of those. I think he's also good on defensive set pieces. And I think he's somebody that I would look at. He's probably the only person that I look at and think, the Yusuf Al-Nassiri, I think he's quite good, but I think he's going to be really, I don't know. If we're going to have to pay, I think they said they wanted like 45 million for him. I don't know if he's worth that, so somebody of that mold though, that's fast too, somebody with some speed behind him. His price tag would be crazy, a good 60 million. Yeah. I mean, if you're going to pay 60 million for Dominic Calvert-Lewin or 45 million for El-Nassiri, I think it depends on would you rather take the risk of somebody that's never played in the Premier League, but they're quite similar in certain ways. Like, they're quite similar in the fact that they can run in behind or post up. They're both really tall and physically imposing. They both can get on the end of crosses with their head. They like a mix as well, so they like to mix in the box, and they have a little bit of skill about them, but I mean, they're not Firmino levels, but you don't need that. So, I mean, 45 million for El Nassiri, 60 to whatever for Dominic Calvert-Lewin. It just depends, and I think they're the same age as well. Shaheen says Calvert-Lewin and Serge Gnabry would be a dream window. I don't know. I mean, I know Gnabry said that if he had to go back to England, where would he want to go? He'd want to come to Arsenal, but I don't know if we're really in the Gnabry Sterling market at this point in terms of, you know, if Gnabry was like, I'm cool, I've won a Champions League, I've won a crap ton of the Bundesliga titles, and I'm just like ready to go chill, maybe, because we're not really that competitive at the moment. We don't have European football. And can he play on the left? Because I would hate for him to take Saka's position. And most of the times I've seen him play is off of the right-hand side. Can he play on the left? I don't remember. But I actually really liked Noah Lang. I actually really like him a lot, and I think he would fit well on that left-hand side. That's about the level of player that we're looking at in terms of they probably have potential. He's 23 years old. He's not quite the finished product, but he fits profile-wise. He's somebody, and probably would cost you about 30 million. Arsenal would be a step up for him. So I think that's kind of where we're shopping at the moment. Yo-Yo said Adu wanted Lautaro Martinez. He would have been a record signing and suffered due to Arteta's dire football. I mean, it's weird, isn't it? Because we were linked with Tammy Abraham, and we know that we were actually in for him. So there's Tammy, and then we've been linked with Yusuf El Nassiri and Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and that's a very specific profile. But then we were also heavily linked with Lautaro Martinez, and that is weird because I feel like what you should be looking for is a profile, like, and stick with it. And so I wouldn't be surprised if there's a disagreement in what we really need up top. If I had to guess, I would think you're right, Yo-Yo, that Adu probably wanted Lautaro Martinez, and maybe Arteta wanted somebody more like a Tammy Abraham. But Lautaro, I don't know. I think it's more than just getting the right butts in the seats, meaning like getting the right profiles of players and stuff. I think fundamentally the way that we play needs to change. I think we need to have more attackers, and I think we need to have the right people attacking. Like, our main creator cannot be our left back, and we can't be so easily stifled if you kick Saka and ESR's ankles. That just don't sit right, and the more that Odegaard plays, we're kind of realizing that he's probably more of an 8. For me, Odegaard is more of somebody that could probably play. I think he's more of an 8. I don't think he's somebody that's going to get into the box, make third man runs, score a lot of goals. That's not really his vibe. So we also have somebody else that, as an attacker, is not going to contribute a lot of goals. And so, although I love the player, I think he would be more suited a little bit further back for us, playing in a midfield 3, and we have another attacking 8 that plays with the left wing, somebody like an Awa, essentially, somebody like that. And then Tierney can overlap when it's useful and not as a necessity in terms of the way that we attack. I think right now it's like, if you don't do it, Tierney, we won't score goals. And I don't think it should be that way. Don One says central midfield is the problem, not the forwards. In what way? Do you think it's the profile of the players or the way that they're meant to play? I mean, I think it's an error to have your left back bombing forward into the attack and having your midfielder play left back, when I feel like the profile of the midfielder, if it was like, let's say you had Donny van de Beek in your midfield, and your midfield was Donny van de Beek, Odegaard, and Thomas Partey. You know what I mean? And so you would have somebody that could be a part of the attack, and you could leave Tierney back. You know what I mean? And who would you rather be in the final third combining with the forwards? Tierney or Donny van der Beek. I think that's an issue. I think the way that we use our players at the moment, and maybe it's about profile and the players that you have, but at the same time, I just think we'd be better off with midfielders combining with the forwards instead of the left back. But can you explain a little bit more why you think central midfield is the problem and not the forwards? I don't think the forwards are like an issue per se, but I do think that the role that they're given is an issue. Saka, the right wing, has too much work to do, and they're never close enough to the goal to just take a touch and shoot. They're never in on goal. They don't get one-on-ones with the goalkeeper. It's very much very crowded areas right outside the box where we're trying to force it, and we end up not getting high. We end up not getting good chances. They're usually swinging at the ball, kicking it over the net, kicking it straight to the keeper. It's weird, taking shots outside the box. So yeah, but can you explain that a little bit more? G. Cossey says, I don't think Arsenal's next striker needs to be 6'2". I think I would prefer somebody a little bit more physically imposing, and that could jump over somebody and get a ball in flight. That's what I would like to see. But maybe it doesn't have to be that. But the strikers that I tend to really like after I did more research on Tammy Abraham, I like that profile. The Tammy Abrahams, the Dominic Calvert-Lewins, the Yusuf El Nassiri's. I like that over the Lautaro Martinez's. You know what I mean? Even though Lautaro does get his head on the ball quite a bit. Yo-Yo says, agree with Don One. The Emirates era went from Cesc, Arteta, Santi, Xhaka. Arteta Edu failed to realize the summer window was an opportunity to transform the side. And yeah, okay, they're saying a target man. Okay. I just feel like when you say target man, you're saying who's an old school target man that wasn't very good at all, but was just big. Well, that's what I feel like a target man is. Yo-Yo. Yeah, I think we said this a lot on the channel, that I think it was a failure not to get a new midfielder. I just do. And I think the more I'm thinking about it now, the more I think about it now, I'm just as much as I would have loved a player like Basuma, and we're not going to get into the allegations, but a player like Basuma, I almost feel like it would have been better to get an Aouar or somebody like that. Somebody in the mold of a Donny van der Beek / Aouar that could play off of the left-hand side of a 3 and could combine with the left wing like Smith Rowe and contribute goals and could pass and was a good ball progressor from midfield. I think that would have been a game-changing recruitment for Arsenal. I think, yes, we needed a goalkeeper. Yes, we needed a creative midfielder. Yes, we needed a backup left back. But there was an opportunity to change the way that we play, and we didn't do that. And I think that specific profile in midfield with a striker changes the game for us. And I'm changing my mind a little bit on whether or not we need another DM. I don't know if we need a 6, because I think Lokonga will grow to be a 6. I think he'll be the deepest in midfield as he gets older and matures and develops. So I don't know if we necessarily need to buy that profile. I think we need to buy that progressive 8 that can overlap, is a runner, can press, can progress the ball, and be dangerous in the final third. And we don't have that. Odegaard will always be the deeper 8. He's just not a progressor in that way. He's not going to skip past the other midfielders and burst through lines, and that's just not him. So I feel like that profile is what's needed, and we didn't get it. And we had the money, and it's just coming back to slap us in the face all over again that we don't have the midfield to compete. George's opinion says we need to sign Pedro Gonçalves because he has goals. I like that player a lot. If we're talking about the same guy, he plays for Sporting. He has a crap ton of goals. And I thought he was an interesting profile of a 10 that scores a lot of goals. A lot of goals. Kind of like a Bruno Fernandes type player, but not annoying. But Pedro Gonçalves, I looked at him over the the transfer window because I saw we were like loosely linked to him. And I thought this guy scored so many goals, 23 years old. And let me find the statistics. Um, yeah, what do you have? 23 goals and 4 assists. Um, that's really, really good. And I don't think we have enough natural goal scorers in our team. We don't. We don't have enough natural goal scorers in our team. We have a bunch of players that we're kind of hoping at some point will get their shooting boots, but we just don't have them. And I think we need one in midfield and we need at least one. We need one in midfield, a new striker, and for one of Bukayo Saka or ESR to become a goal monster. And right now they're just not it. And I know somebody would probably said, what about Martinelli? But I don't even know what his future holds at the moment. So yeah, we'll see what happens. G Kasi says Ox coming through. Oh my gosh, a nightmare. I know some people are like, cool, take him on a loan. It's very this, it's very that, but he comes straight to London Colony and gets injured in practice. Like the guy is no. Velvet Shorten says, Jess, thoughts on Alexander Isak. I love him. I think if we were in a different position, I would say that's the perfect player to invest in terms of a replacement for Aubameyang, because I think he's a typical Arsenal player. When you watch him play, you think Arsenal. He kind of reminds me of Van Persie in that way, where not in like levels or anything, but he's very good on the ball for somebody so big. And back then, strikers, like, you didn't really see a lot of the flariness of a striker. Like a 9 didn't have those flary touches to them. And I thought Van Persie was elegant in the way that he played. And strikers up until that point, except for like Thierry and a couple others, were very like just brutish and just there to just finish off the play. Van Persie was very flary and elegant in the way that he plays, and I feel the same way about Isak. I think he's elegant for even for somebody of his size. He's so fast, and I like that about him. He can run in behind. He can also come out wide. He's much better in build up than Aubameyang. You can trust him with the ball. He's quite technically secure, and the one thing about him is that I think he's 21 years old, and what I would like is for us not to invest anymore into players under 23, because I think we have enough of those. We kind of need players that are already kind of cooked. You know, we need the next 3 signings to be players that you can trust to plug and play straight into this team. We have like 8 under 23s, don't we? You know, and right now I think that we have an influx of them at this point. And I would like the striker to be 24, 25 years old, if I'm honest, you know, and have some legs under them. I think this is his season to really prove it. I think he had the season where people started to look at him. He did decently for Sweden in the Euros. And I think this is the season where he needs to prove that he can score like 15 to 20 goals in the season for La Liga. And we'll see if he can do that. But I have the same vibes about him and Osimhen, where I'm just kind of like, good players have a lot of people talking about them and all that kind of stuff, but I would prefer somebody a little bit more stabilized at this point. Osimhen didn't score that many goals last season. He really didn't. Gid says Tony is a perfect fit. I like Ivan Toney. I got some shit from people saying like, well, he's not on Arsenal's level. And I'm like, how can he not be on Arsenal's level? Like, Arsenal has never been a team that felt like some players are just beneath them because of where they come from. If that's what you think, you don't really know Arsenal that well, because you don't know anything about Ian Wright. That's the kind of player that he reminds me of somebody that he's not that old either. He's like 24, 25, but he came from lower leagues. Nobody really rated him, and he just kind of worked his way up. And I think he has the right mentality, the right type of grittiness. He can hold up the ball a little bit. I was told that he couldn't pass, and I saw like he definitely can pass the ball. No, he's not Kevin De Bruyne or Mesut Ozil, but he can pass, and he's dangerous in the box, you know. So he's somebody that I wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, why did we get him? But I would still prefer the other 3 or the other 2 that I mentioned in Yusuf El Nassiri or Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Um, let's see. Gid says Sar would be great for us. Reminds me of Mane. Um, Sar from Watford. I like him. I do. If that's who you're talking about, the player that I'm looking at that I feel like will end up at Liverpool because it just feels like he is like a mini Mane. But that's Musa Diaby from Bayer Leverkusen. I've been watching him for the last couple of years, ever since he left PSG and ended up in the Bundesliga, and I just think he's a mini Mane. He's a terrorizer. Like he's so good. And he made the French squad this time around, and one to watch, I think. I think he would be perfect in the Premier League. He's just like Mane, and Mane's my favorite non-Arsenal player. I think he's criminally underrated. Um, and that's a player that I would like to see us look at. But I do like Sar. But again, on Wednesday, you guys, we're going to have the Pepe talk because I think that's an important factor in all of this. I think there's some of us that would like to see a different profile of wide men come in. And that can't happen if Nicola Pepe is at the club. And maybe Pepe is that guy, but at the moment, it's inconclusive. Nkunku is my guy too. I love him so much. I wish he was at Arsenal. It's funny because Emery wanted Nkunku, but he didn't get him. Weird, right? Nkunku is great. Sorry, you guys, my camera went wonky. Okay, so enough of that. But Arteta deserved manager, of the month, but we'll see what he's got in the locker in these next couple of games. But Saliba. So Fabrizio Romano came out and said that Saliba has known for weeks that he's going to be coming back to Arsenal, and yeah, we have no intentions of moving him on, whatever. And I think that's interesting, because starting out this season, I would have thought he's definitely not coming back. And I still think, you know, he needs a new contract. I think that's a key part of this is can you get him to commit to another 5-year contract at Arsenal, knowing that he's not going to get playing time? I don't see him coming in and starting over Ben White and Gabriel. I don't see it. But I think that this loan at Marseille has probably been the best thing for him because he's going to get a full season. Remember, his other loans were broken seasons. He didn't get like the full season to do his thing. This is a full season of him playing, men's football. And I do think every time that I've watched him, I still think the same things about him. I think he's going to be a top center back. And the funny thing about France is that they have many, many center backs and they basically manufacture them. It's insane. But I think Saliba has the makings of a really special center back. I think he's good on the ball. I think he's confident. Once he really grows into his body, I think he's going to be really physically imposing. And I think he has pretty good footballing IQ, but he's still young. And he's somebody that I don't think is ready for the scrutiny of starting for Arsenal Football Club in the Premier League. But I would like to see him come back. Now, again, is it worth it for him to come in and sit on our bench? I'm not sure. Are we going to rotate our back line enough for him to get suitable minutes? I'm not sure. I really don't want him to have a Martinelli season. I'm predicting that Martinelli, unless there's a huge injury, which I'm still not even sure that if we get one, that he's the first player up. But I don't want him to just sit around and wither away. I think he's the type of player that could be starting somewhere else, but Arsenal is just not really that place right now. And so I'm happy to know, we have to be careful about some of this stuff because it may come to the summer that Saliba has decided that he doesn't want to sign a new deal and we have to sell him. But I do like the sound of maybe mending fences there because I feel as though this was salvageable where the Guendouzi one was not. I don't think Saliba was acting out in a way that was you couldn't come back from it. Do I like all the things that he's done? No. But do I think that it's his fault that we didn't get the paperwork for the loan in on time? No. And do I think he's so bad that he can't be in this team? No. But did I want him starting the season? No, I didn't. So I think there's a lot of factors there. But Saliba, Saliba, Tomiyasu, because I think Tomiyasu in the future, I hope, just becomes a center back for Arsenal Football Club. As much as I like the way that we're playing right now, I do think it's restrictive in the way that we we attack. And I would think once, maybe after this season, and we get hopefully European football, that he would become a center back option and we would get an attacking fullback. Um, but I don't know if that's in Arteta's plans or not. But that's what I would expect, is for us to get an attacking fullback and for Tomiyasu, Saliba, Gabriel, and White to be our center back options. And we could move on from the likes of Chambers and Holding and maybe even Pablo Marie, because he's not that great. I could also see a scenario where Ben White slides into the right back spot. I think he would be a better right back than Tomiyasu. And maybe you see something like a Gabriel, Saliba, White, and Tierney backline. So there's options there. But I also feel like this is all contingent on us getting European football, because I don't think it's worth it for Saliba to come back to Arsenal to sit on our bench. I just don't see it, you know? And I think your backline, although it should be flexible enough where you could bring other people in and you should have the quality to bring people in and not have huge drop off, I do think that you want to keep it as consistent as possible. And at the moment, I don't see him coming straight in and benching one of Ben White or Gabriel at the moment. Definitely not Gabriel. So we'll definitely see what happens with that. I really want things to work out with Saliba, and I really want us to get European football so we do have minutes for him. But we'll see. We'll see. Um, Lord Gunnar says Ramsdale took his chance over an established player like Leno, and I see no reason why Saliba can't do the same against Ben White. I don't think he took his chance. I think it was already there for him to have. I think Leno had already fallen out with Arteta, and because he was unwilling to sign a new deal and commit his future to Arsenal, I think the idea was always to bring in Ramsdale. I don't think he really had to fight for a spot. I think it was pretty clear from the beginning, in my view, that he was going to be the number one goalkeeper. Ben White has not fallen out with Arteta. Arteta really likes him. Arteta has said that he feels like he's extraordinary or will be extraordinary for us. So I think it will be different for Saliba to come in and take Ben White's spot. Tony Smith says might play 3 at the back. I wouldn't really mind that. But again, I think the back 3 suits us in some ways, but I think it also hinders us in others. But like I said, maybe Ben White, Saliba, and Gabriel. You never really know. George's opinion, Saliba counts as homegrown next season. He absolutely does, which means that you can move on from a Chambers or a Rob Holding, which I think Chambers is probably somebody that I would look to move on, because I don't see him getting back into this team at the moment. Let's see. Don One says Ben White looks better than Saliba. I mean, I don't know. I think I want to see more of Ben White. I think Ben White and Saliba, I think it's an unfair comparison. I think based on how you feel about Arteta, you'll feel differently about Ben White. And I think I heard somebody earlier today say Ben White and his aerial duels, he's not good in the air. And I've seen nothing of the sort since he's been here. I think he's been perfectly fine. I think he's been a perfectly fine defender. I think he's had some issues playing out of the back, but who doesn't? And so for me, when I look at it, I just think for me, it's not Ben White versus Saliba at the moment. I think Saliba has to start in the Premier League for us to know really if he's better. Let's not act like the French league is similar to the Premier League at all. And let's not act like Saliba has not made any mistakes at Marseille. He has mistakes in him as well, just like Ben White. So I hate to really compare the two, I really do. So we'll see. Blaze says, how Arteta chose Pablo Marie over Saliba. I don't understand this. I mean, I don't know if it was that simple. I don't know if he looked at the two of them and said Pablo Marie is better than Saliba. But would I prefer Pablo Marie sitting on the bench, withering away, and Saliba out on loan? Absolutely, because Saliba is getting valuable opportunities to play men's football in another league. And do I care that Pablo Marie is not getting playing time and maybe getting worse on the bench? No, I don't. Saliba does not benefit from sitting on Arsenal's bench when we don't have Europe. He just doesn't. And that's why I don't think it's that big of a deal that Saliba is not here, and Pablo Mari is. And I really don't think Arteta sat there and said, Pablo Mari, you're better than Saliba. Saliba, go. I don't think it's that simple. G. Kasi says Marie probably wouldn't mind sitting on the bench. I mean, I don't think he does. Saliba would want playing time. And that's my biggest fear, is that if we don't have European football, we won't have the minutes to give him. And that worries me, because I feel like that is a perfect opportunity for him to say, you know what, I'm not signing a new deal. And after a good season at Marseille, I'm sure somebody would want to buy him. And I'm just not ready to let him go yet. Yo-Yo said the back five is the least of Arteta's problems at the moment in time. Yeah. I mean, we spent like 40 minutes talking about it. I really think he needs the offense, the attack is just not ticking. And I'm not 100% sure that a striker really changes that. I'm not sure. I'm sorry my camera is like weird and fuzzy all of a sudden. I moved out of the focus and then it went like weird. But yeah, I'm not sure if if a striker really changes that. I know that a better striker will make differences, but I also feel like it's the way that we play, But yeah. Oh, wait. I saw a comment that was interesting. G. Kasi says, did you miss the Brentford match, Jess? He was struggling against Tony in the air. Everybody has struggled against Tony in the air. If you go back and if you've watched, the thing is I watch every single game that happens in the Premier League, and every single team has struggled with Tony in the air, because he's superior to almost everybody in the air. So Ben White struggling is not really an indication of his talent. There's just it's like a slow center back struggling against, a really fast attacker. That doesn't mean that the defender is bad. It just means that attacker is really quick, and I think when you have that physical superiority over somebody and everybody is kind of having a hard time dealing with them, you can kind of give a little bit of grace. But he did perfectly fine against Burnley. He did perfectly fine against Brighton. So he did fine against Harry Kane, who is supposed to be like super, super good. So yeah, one match against somebody who's given everybody a hard time, to me, doesn't really, it's not really a data point for me. It's just it's just something to kind of say it happened, Let's see. Yo-Yo says, do you think there's a possible decision to make between Odie and Abba for Laka, Pepe, Martinelli until the return of Xhaka AFCON? Well, so here's the thing, is that after the Brighton match, I kind of, I was sitting there thinking, because I really could not be asked to watch that game over. I did try to watch the first half and I was like, bleh, that was so bad. But I remember going back, and you've said this a lot, Yo-Yo, is that the partnerships have to make sense. Odegaard and Aubameyang are a match made in heaven a little bit. They really work with each other. But then I don't think that necessarily works out well for Smith Rowe. And I think the most dangerous combination that we had last season was Lacazette, ESR, Pepe, and Saka. Like some sort of combination of that. I think that was kind of the combination that played against West Brom, but it also had other games like against Southampton where it was really good as well. So when I think about it that way, I'm thinking that with Xhaka not there, I almost feel like I would prefer us to go into the system with Odegaard dropping into midfield like he did in the Burnley match, into that left center mid spot, and bringing back the ESR, Saka, Pepe, Lacazette in the front four. Because then you get your double tens in there with ESR and Lacazette being able to drop in. They play really well together. That front four works. I think. The issue is that I know Arteta doesn't like playing Pepe on the left, but I kind of feel like at this point, you can't be too, picky because you're not really scoring goals now. And I think we're better off with all of those players out there at once to try to force goals while Xhaka's not there. I think if you drop Odegaard into a position where he's not really the sole 10, and he can just control the midfield with Thomas, and ESR and Saka can drop in, and Lacazette and Pepe can play like forwards, almost like a 4-2-2-2, then you're cooking then. And that's what I would do, and drop Aubameyang for the next match against Crystal Palace and see how it goes. I thought, and even though, because I think Lacazette needs to go, like I'm the main person that's like, he's got to go. But that combination, ESR, Lacazette, Saka, and Pepe works. It just does. And it's a little bit more potent than the Odegaard with Aubameyang, ESR shunted out to the left. It works, but it doesn't sometimes. You know what I mean? And so I'm almost like throw all the attackers out there and see what happens. That's kind of where I'm at. Neil Gunner 93 says Tommy and Pepe could be good, allows Pepe to go forward more. Pepe's issue is not about getting forward. Pepe needs to be closer to the box. Pepe is not receiving the ball in the optimal areas for Pepe. Pepe's best position is right on the edge of the box where he can take a touch and shoot. If he has to try to beat the man in the final third, which is not his strong suit, where Pepe is good is when he needs to beat a man, his best way of doing that is at the halfway line when he spins the defender and goes forward, or running full speed on counterattack with tons of real estate in behind the defenders where they're kind of have to either commit or run back towards their goal. Pepe is not good when we're stagnant in the attack, the opposition's half between the edge of the box and the sideline. That is not where he's best. He needs to be closer in. I would say in between where the box and the 6 yard, those two lines. I would say that's his little space of joy because he can just shoot from that spot. So I think for me, Pepe and Tommy is a good combination, but the way that we play and where he receives the ball is not optimal for him. And so that's what we need to work on. But yeah, basically what I would try, and I'm not a coach, so I could just be like totally just sounding so stupid, but what I would try against Crystal Palace, because I feel like we should have the superiority in terms of our quality. Crystal Palace is looking okay, but it's still Crystal Palace, right? Is I would play this same 5 at the back that we've been playing. Partey, Odegaard, Smith Rowe, Saka, Pepe, Lacazette. That's what I would play. And see what happens, and let the front, those attackers switch positions, Saka and Pepe switching positions, and see what happens from there. But that's what I would want to see. But yeah, George's opinion says Pepe would bang at Liverpool. I mean, we just don't put our attackers in great positions, especially Aubameyang and Pepe. I think they need less work to do, and our attackers have so much work to do when they receive the ball because the next pass is not readily on. We don't have overlapping players to create overloads, and we usually allow the defense to get back into their spots. Like, you know what I mean? So it's just not great. But yeah, we'll see what happens. But that's what I would do. Could be completely wrong. I would drop Aubameyang and just see what else we could do. But ultimately, we need to figure out different ways of attacking that's not so predictable. But yeah, you guys, we've talked about everything under the sun. Jack Wilshere being back, Arteta is manager of the month, and Saliba in his progression. So I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. This will be up on audio, so don't worry. I mean, you guys have already watched. I don't know if you guys would want to re-listen to it, but if you are listening to this on audio, I hope you enjoy it. And we'll talk to you guys tomorrow. What's tomorrow? Tuesday. So another show earlier in the day around 3 p.m. UK time, and another show around 7:30 p.m. UK time talking about the women. You know, they're still top of the league. They had a really tough game in Barcelona, and some other little tidbits as well. So it'll be an Arsenal women's podcast around this time tomorrow. So, hey, you guys, I really enjoyed talking to you, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.